parties will be wary to also get involved in coalitions, but could harm them in the next election. But we are definitely going to see, I don't think we're going to see service delivery improve markedly going forward, but I hope I'm proved wrong.
South Africa's local government elections have produced a high degree of fragmentation across the political landscape. Joining me to discuss the particular dynamics that are emerging across the country is Marius Roodt. He is with the Institute of Race Relations. Marius, what can you tell us about the major cities? What are we seeing across the various metros?
Well, what we've seen is out of the 8 metros, there have only been 3 where parties won a majority. That's Cape Town, where while we're talking now, there's still counting going on, but the DA will probably get about 60% of the vote there. Buffalo City or East London down in the Eastern Cape, ANC will get about 60%, and in Mangaung, Bloemfontein, the ANC is just above 50%. So those are the only 3 metros where parties won't need a coalition to govern. In the rest of the country, in the other metros, the picture is much more fragmented. In Nelson Mandela Bay, Port Elizabeth, I won't try the other name, it's pretty much a dead heat between the ANC and DA down there. Each party has about 40% of the votes. EFF's come 3rd in Nelson Mandela Bay with about 6%. So whatever governing coalition comes out there, it's going to have to include more than 2 parties. So it's going to be a mess. But if we come up to Gauteng, things are even more interesting. Out of the 3 metros in Gauteng, there hasn't been no parties managed to come even close to winning majority. The ANC is the biggest party in each of the metros, but it hasn't even won above 40% in any of those metros. So things are also going to be very interesting there. In Ekurhuleni, the ANC and the EFF together do get above 50%. So perhaps there could be a fairly stable coalition on the East Rand between the ANC and the EFF. But in Tshwane and in Johannesburg, things are much more complicated. In Johannesburg, for example, the ANC is on 33%. It's only got 1/3 of the votes. This is with nearly all the votes counted. That is a pretty bad result for the ANC. It's about an 11 percentage point decrease from the last election. The ANC is on 26. We have Herman Mashaba's Action SA, which has put in a very good performance in Johannesburg at 16%, and then the EFF at nearly 11%. So again, there will have to be a coalition in Joburg it'll have to be a coalition of at least 3 parties. So we'll have to see what happens there. In Tshwane, we're seeing something pretty similar. ANC is on also just over 1/3 of the votes. DA is on about 32%. EFF on nearly 11%. Action SA comes with 8%, and the Freedom Front Plus with also nearly 8%. So there's going to be some very complicated coalition dynamics there. In Johannesburg and Tshwane, it is possible for the DA to cobble together a coalition without the EFF, but but it's going to be complicated. There's going to be a coalition of probably at least 3 or 4 parties if the DA even wants to try that. I wouldn't be surprised if the DA decides to stay out of government this round and let the ANC try and run these cities. We've seen that it's a hard job and a complicated job to run these big cities in Gauteng. So we'll have to see what happens.
Enjoying this analysis? Click here to sign up for our 30-day free trial for more content from the CIA.
Right, Marius, let's tease out some of the bargaining positions of the various political parties. So you mentioned the EFF and the ANC. They obviously come from the same historical, ideological roots, if you will, the same charterist tradition. But the EFF is going to be very keenly aware of its leverage and its power and its kingmaker role in key cities. So how are they going to use that bargaining chip?
Well, I've just seen a report just before we started this broadcast with Julius Malema saying that if the ANC wants the EFF to go into coalition with them in various metros and coalitions, the ANC is going to have to support their position on expropriation without compensation. So, I mean, this is obviously, I'm sure most of people watching and listening are quite aware of what's been happening over the past few years with that policy. So obviously Julius Malema will be wanting to use that as a bargaining chip. The ANC, although it's broadly in support of expropriation without compensation, it seemed to be a bit wary of the EFF's kind of position where they effectively want a wholesale nationalization of all land in South Africa. So I think that is, that's a big bargaining chip the EFF has. I wouldn't be surprised if we see that the ANC decides to rather govern as a minority government, and then tries to enter in some kind of confidence and supply agreement with various smaller parties to try, pass budgets, elect mayors, and so on. And I think that could be more likely. It's also the EFF we've seen going back to 2016. It was very wary of getting formally involved in government. It was much more keen to be in informal coalitions or confidence and supply agreements, which we could also call them. And this could be what they decide to do again in this election.
All right. So, Marius, we could have a situation where we have a number of hung councils and these minority governments, as you explained, but that's going to have a big effect on service delivery because, ultimately, as we saw in places like Nelson Mandela Bay, there's a lot of churn, a lot of instability in these councils, which maybe relegated service delivery to the back row. So how is that going to impact citizens on the ground in these cities?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. We're going to see problems with service delivery. We're going to see infighting between various political groups and wanting, their policies put forward or their people and people in their parties and so on. So I think the people who are going to suffer the most and this is going to be people who is going to be the citizens of the various municipalities and so on. And I think we can see a good example of how this does affect parties when they are involved in coalition governments. We've seen how the DA lost support in Johannesburg, in Tshwane, and in Nelson Mandela Bay, all places where it was part of governing coalitions. But then conversely, in Midvaal, where it's governed alone since I'm not too sure how long it's been in government there, but it was in government in 2016. It actually saw its support go up now from about 59% to 62% of the vote. So I think, parties will be wary to also get involved in coalitions, but could harm them in the next election. But we are definitely going to see, I don't think we're going to see service delivery improve markedly going forward, but, I hope I'm proved wrong.
And if you were a DA strategist at the moment, Marius, would you be satisfied with this result? Because they went backwards in a number of metros, but also managed to hold on to Cape Town and had a surprise victory in Mngeni in KZN. So a bit of a mixed picture emerging for the DA.
I think overall, if you look at the headline number for the DA, they got around about, I think, just under 22% of the vote as it stands now, which is actually, it's a lot less than they got in 2016, where they got almost 27%, but it's also less than what they got in 2011, and they got about 24% of the vote. So looking at the headline number, it's pretty bad for the DA. Also, if you drill down in some of the numbers, especially in the rural Western Cape, the DA has done pretty badly. It's lost its majority in quite a few places in the Western Cape. I think a good example, if we look at the Cedarburg on the West Coast, it went from having 55% of the vote to having 20% of the vote in this election. It was beaten to third place by the ANC and a small local party. So it's called the Cedarburg Eerste. So, and it was a story across the Western Cape, outside of the more urban areas such as Cape Town, Stellenbosch, the Drakensberg municipality, which I think includes Paarl. But then, as you say, it had some things where it can be pretty chuffed with itself. It won an election in Mngeni, the first time. That's Howick and Nottingham Road in Natal. That's the first time it's won a municipality in KZN. So that's definitely something to look at. It's also, although it's retreated in quite a few places across the country, it actually went forward in Sedibeng, where it helped to, that is Vereniging, where it helped to bring the ANC's majority under 50%. That's probably also going to have to be governed in a coalition. And that's also a municipality that we know has had some serious problems over the last few years. So I think that's also testament to what the DA has done in some parts of the country. So I think, I think if I was a DA strategist, I'd go see what people like Greg Krumbach and Chris Papas did in Mngeni to go from being a 30-odd% party to being a majority party in that province. But I think overall, the DA isn't going to be happy with this election result, and it's going to have to ask itself, especially in places like the Western Cape, where it's been running municipalities pretty well. The place has been getting clean audits. They've been ranked as some of the best municipalities in the country, yet the DA still loses majority in some of these places. So it's definitely something to look at.
So Marius, what about New Kid on the Block, Action SA, Herman Mashaba's outfit? They did surprisingly well. What are your reflections on their performance and how they might approach potential coalition negotiations?
Action SA, they've done pretty well. I think they've definitely surprised a few people. They won nearly 20% of the votes in Johannesburg, close to 10% in Ekurhuleni and Tshwane. They also did pretty well in Newcastle, where they won an award outright. and they've got over 2% of the national vote, despite running in only 6 municipalities across the country. So I think there's something about Herman Mashaba's message, kind of social conservatism mixed maybe with a free market message that people like. And also, if you drill down into some municipalities in places like Soweto and so on, you can see how Action SA has got up to 20 or 30% of the vote. So it seems to be pulling ANC voters as much as it's pulling DA voters. So I think Herman Mashaba is definitely, he's mining kind of a seam of South African political minerals here that nobody else has seemed to have found yet. I mean, he's definitely one to watch. And what he plans to do, if he's willing to go into government, into a coalition, especially say in Johannesburg with the ANC, he's pretty much said he's ruling it out. But the fruits of being in government and so on, and various other things, it might be too much temptation for him. But I think as it stands, my guess would be he'll probably sit this around out and then be an opposition player in Gauteng in the various metros, and then have Clive a strong go at becoming a very, very big player in Gauteng in 2024. And I'm sure he'll also be aiming to do pretty well nationally in 2024 too.
Marius Roodt, thank you very much. Please do note that the Centre for Risk Analysis will be hosting a webinar exclusively for clients of the CRA. That's today, Friday, the 5th of November at 10 a.m. There's a link in the description below where you can register if you are a client. And if you're not a client, you can join us via our 30-day free trial. So sign up via the link in the description. My name is David Ansara. Until next time, take care.